Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Fort, and we are here for another poetry discussion from the incomparable mind and pen and cigar of Charles Bukowski in The Pleasures of the Damned. This poem happening on page 105. It is called Something About a Woman, and it reads as such. Ah, Merriman, a fighter on the docks, killed a man while we were unloading bananas. I mean, the man he killed clubbed him first from behind with an anchor chain. Something about a woman. And we all circled around while Merriman did him in, under a hard-on sun, finally strangling him to death, throwing him into the ocean. Merriman leaped to the dock and walked away. Nobody tried to stop him. Then we went back to work unloading the rest of the bananas. Nothing was ever said about the murder between any of us, and I never saw anything about it in the papers, although I saw some of the bananas later in the markets, 2 pounds for a quarter. They seemed a bargain. The thing that strikes me most about this poem is the nameless, faceless worker bee nature of the collective we. This does not read first person, but almost second person. You are very much implicated in this we, in the we that we have here. You have no choice in the matter. Much as Merriman seems to have not had any choice in the matter. That matter being killing the other guy. He was implicated in a fight and simply let the emotions take him. He was on autopilot. The same type of autopilot that we indulge when we go to work every day. And we just sort of exist. And we go about those things that we have to do. Very worker bee-like. But also something primal. The poem, after all, is titled Something About a Woman. Where we most often hear that phrase is, there's just something about that woman. I don't know what it is, but there's something about her. There's just something about that man. I don't know what it is, but there's something about him. Something primal that we recognize, but we're unable to name. And the second element here that is woefully underplayed by Bukowski, maybe not woefully, it certainly seems to have been a choice, is the bananas. Obviously, they're phallic in shape. They're often played that way in popular culture. But they're also a reminder that we're all just primates. But framing the bananas is the phrase under a hard-on sun. This is an emotion, this is a primal urge which has subverted all of the individuals involved here. A need for violence, a need for sex. And just what one is or is not willing to do for that. Framing still that, the docks. We're at work. Merriman, a fighter on the docks. And later, we've gone to someone else's workplace and seen those bananas. Those bananas which someone might spend their hard-earned money on to satisfy another primal urge to eat. And it's one of the things that is, I think, undervalued in Bukowski because it is so on the nose, and that is the primal nature of things. The primal urges, the primal drives, those things which we recognize but are unable to name. Those things which might be so inherent in our experience that we don't even know to name them. If there was not a word for consciousness, if there was not a name for it, a word for it, a definition of it, Would you even know that you had it? Or would you simply be existing? And those are the things which play very much throughout Bukowski. Those things which might not be named. We have violence in much of Bukowski. But do we have names for different types of violence? We have the sex drive throughout Bukowski. But do we have names for the types of sex drives? Lust, love? Many times they go unnamed to Bukowski, or they're just the same thing. Violence, much the same way. Here we have murder, violence to the definitive point. Violence in a terminal manner. And what happens afterwards? We all go about our day, and Merriman, a person who is named and commits the ultimate violence, simply disappears into the day under the hard-on sun. And there is that relationship between sex and violence which is drawn upon in this poem. Under the hard-on sun, it's about a woman, the act of murder, the symbols of bananas, to which we are all slaves, things that rule over us. If we were to name them, would it give us any better understanding of them? Would we simply be able to differentiate between them? It's hard to say. Bukowski, most of the time, doesn't seem to care. Doesn't seem to want to give these things the diligence necessary in order to name them. He just gives them definitions with these poems. The nuance is in the individual experience of the poem. Something about a woman. Something. The conflict was something about a woman. That woman, so valuable to both of these men, that this terminal fight was necessary. There was just something about her. And make no mistake, this was a terminal fight, and it was always going to be that way. He was attacked first with a hook, for Christ's sake. Merriman was. So, if we do not have a choice in these matters, and the subject of our poem does not have a choice in this matter, if he doesn't defend himself there, what's he going to do? It brings up the question of free will again. Do we have free will? Free Willigan. That's Free Willy's less known cousin. He was never really captured. No one really knew about him after that. After his cousin had a movie made about him, he was just the less successful cousin. But it does bring up the question of free will and how much we have to say over our daily lives. We don't have enough free will that we can simply quit our jobs and live a natural life. And it seems neither do we have free will enough to be able to override those base desires which live in all of us to some varying degree. And that is, again, wrapped up so nicely in the nameless collective we that exists in this poem. And I think that Bukowski is overrated by some and vastly underrated by others. And it's little nuance and little things like this that lead me down that road and lead me to that opinion. But that's all I have for this discussion of Something About a Woman from Pleasures of the Damned by Charles Bukowski. If you like this sort of thing, be sure to leave a like on this video because it really helps us out here on the channel. If you'd like to help us grow as a channel, maybe share this on some form of social media. And if you'd like to help us make more content here on Strip Cover Lit, there is, as always, a link to our Patreon to be found in the description below.